This is Honest Steven. Today we're here with my first honest review of Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition. This game was originally released on the GameCube in 2005, so it's a fairly old game. You probably have heard several opinions on it by now, praising it as one of the greatest games of all time and completely revolutionized the development of games and the direction they went in, and for better or worse, pretty much pivoting the Resident Evil series into a completely different direction. It has been released on several different platforms. GameCube, PlayStation 2, there was a PC port, then there was the Wii Edition, I believe. They did a mobile version at one point, which was just a joke. They released an HD version on the 360 and the PS3. Then they did a better PC version along with a true HD port on the PS4 and Xbox One. It's even been released on a system called the Zeebo. I don't know what that is, but it's some kind of thing that warranted Capcom's attention. I specifically went with the Wii Edition because I think that it is the best overall package, and I will do what I can to explain that logic as we go along. But it's a couple of important things to point out in the differences. The GameCube version ran with letterbox, so it had the black bars on top and bottom. The PS2 port attempted to fix that by changing how the graphics engine ran, but due to that and other transitional things that occurred, the lighting engine was screwed up. The frame rate wasn't as consistent as it should have been. There were some animation hiccups and stuff like that, if I remember correctly. And the special features from the PS2 version were not the special features from the GameCube version. So between the two, you essentially had completely separate packages. Like, you'd be getting different experiences. Capcom did rectify that with the Wii Edition and subsequent versions by essentially consolidating everything using the GameCube as a base, fixing the aspect ratio so that it's full screen, and taking everything from the PS2 version and everything from the GameCube version and putting it in one package. That's part of the reason why I care most about the Wii version. The other reason is the controls, which we will get to down the line. But yeah, so what are my thoughts on it overall? Well, you boot up the game, and right from the get-go, you dropped right into a little bit of backstory for players that might not have been following the series from its original games, considering 4 is technically a direct sequel to 2, due to following the same character of Leon Kennedy. The first thing you'll see due to that is just how awesome of a job Capcom did with the graphics engine and the overall just design and the art direction and the sound design. It's just, they do a lot of smart things. Like, there's a high prevalence of fog for the outdoor sections, but not like the terrible stuff you saw on older consoles like the N64. It's just a good translucent fog that allows the engine to render a lot more minute details than you might have expected in other games while not straining itself much. The GameCube and the PS2 and the original PC versions all ran at a 30 frames per second, if I remember Digital Foundry's research, though there were some weird inconsistencies with how the frames were provided. So the frame rate never dropped, but it would cause weird timing flukes, I believe. It's the best way to put it. The Wii Edition, due to it being based on the GameCube version and not running on higher, more powerful hardware, also runs at 30 frames per second, but it's rock solid. Like, at the time, it was the level of detail on the character models and the textures and the backgrounds and stuff were just they were really cutting edge, and it was pretty cool to see up front, especially for diehard Nintendo fans that were under the impression that Resident Evil 4 was going to be a GameCube exclusive. We see how that went, considering it's on every platform known to man. But that's another story. After you take control of Leon, the first thing you realize if you are a fan of the series is that it is the traditional classic Resident Evil control scheme, just with a camera perspective that is from over the shoulder, which future games would just took advantage of, man. I mean, a lot of games were directly, heavily inspired by Resident Evil 4. It really shows. But you don't feel as limited, even though you still have to stop and shoot, which is interesting. They just did a really impressive job of balancing Leon's movement and animation speed in regards to the situations he gets put in. Everything feels really good on the GameCube and the PS2 and the current generation consoles and everything like that. You know, you play it like you would a normal third-person game as much as you can based on the age of the game. On the Wii edition specifically, though, it supports the Wii Remote and Nunchuck combination, which allows you to aim with the infrared pointer. And that is probably the crowning reason why I will always stand by the Wii edition over the other versions. I'm not very good at controlling dual analog. I play first-person shooters here and there and stuff like that, and I'm competent, but I'm not an ace, and it shows. But I have really good control over the Wii Remote in that regard. Being able to just perfectly, pixel-perfect place that cursor where I need it to be when I need it to be there makes everything feel butter smooth. The layout of the buttons feel perfectly good. It's really well thought out. They, of course, due to the nature of the platform, had to slide some gimmicks in there with the motion controls. But while I don't really care for them much during the quick time events that pop up in the game, you have a quick knife action tied to it. And that on its own wouldn't be too big of a deal, but it revolutionizes how you play this game because if you are close enough to something that Leon can strike with a knife, he will automatically aim towards it and strike. And that saves you so much time. I mean, you can walk up to an enemy that's down, swing the controller, you aim down, you slice him. It helps. Same thing with breaking boxes. Now, you might be thinking that in combination with the infrared cursor, aiming controls, it might make the game too easy. And I disagree completely. I think it is very excellently balanced. It's not auto-aim completely. Like, you have to get up onto the enemies in dangerously close proximity like you would with the knife. The only difference is you just don't have to push another stick. Still have to press the button and everything. And the option is there. You can still ready the knife and aim manually. Feels better, and just because you can prepare yourself with where you're aiming before you ready your gun, the AI in this game is really intelligent. They try to dodge your moves, they try to cut you off, they try to run around you, they swarm you, they work as a group, you know, and I don't really think it hurts the experience. I think it makes it better, you know. The game is more approachable due to that, because take my wife, for example. She likes to play video games a lot, but she doesn't sit down for several hours a day training her thumbs that way. So giving her a Wii Remote, it's a more natural movement with your wrist as opposed to your manual, you know, your tiny little movements with the thumb. And she's able to get into it a lot easier. I narrow field of a test on that kind of thing, but I think it's a pretty good point to represent that the accessibility is raised up a bit. I don't really think there are very many examples you could show that outdo Resident Evil 4 on the Wii in regards to taking advantage of the Wii Remote and the Nunchuck. It doesn't do anything mind-blowing. It's not trying to completely reinvent the wheel. It understands what's available to the player, and it utilizes it in a very intelligent way. And it also makes the game more fun. I mean, call me silly, but pointing a controller at the TV, it's entertaining, and, you know, slashing your arm across the screen, it just invokes a little bit more of a response in regards to the situation. With the controls being so well thought out and smartly implemented, it makes it pretty easy to just go ahead and get right into the game. I mean, one of the very first things that you encounter in your playthrough of the game is the village raid, for lack of a better phrase. You walk into a village and it starts, and enemies start coming from everywhere, and it very, very quickly explains to you that these are not zombies in the traditional sense. They are smart, they are coordinated, and you need to learn to utilize your abilities to the best that you can if you want to survive. And that's pretty much all you need. That one sequence is so perfectly paced that you feel completely prepared for the rest of the game, because it works as a tutorial without any tutorial present. It's just, here's how it goes, survive, and if you do, now you can start the game. That's why the title sequence doesn't even pop up till after that, which is pretty cool. It's a nice little touch. If you followed my Let's Play, you will have probably noticed that towards the second half of the game, I did voice my complaint a couple times that I felt it was too long. I finished my Let's Play at roughly 10 hours with knowing the game pretty well. So you could look at like 15 to 20. And that's not terrible. That's definitely a good value overall for your investment. But coming from a person who doesn't have a bunch of time to invest in the hobby anymore, being a father, having a job, and a social life and everything like that, I like to be able to sit down for a half hour, 45 minutes, you know, a day if I can, and play more than one game every few months, you know? And it's kind of, this cuts it close. This is very much right on that edge there. The bigger reason why I don't really like its length is because the plot kind of outstays its welcome. It starts off really interesting. It's very intriguing. There's the president's daughter has been kidnapped. You go looking for her, and you find this just very, very rural, out there, just farmland village, and it doesn't really tie together. It's like, well, if there's a terrorist group that is kidnapping the president's daughter, how did they do it with just a bunch of sickles and pitchforks? And you realize that there's a cult, and that things are going a little weirder and deeper, and it's pretty interesting. But as you learn more and more about the cult, it starts to show cracks in its believability. It's not so much that I think every game's story has to be grounded in realism and completely viable. It's more so that it feels like the directors of Resident Evil 4 wanted the game to play out in the manner of a B-movie, which is traditional for the Resident Evil series, of course, but in a more acknowledged B-movie sense. So it's very campy, and the character's dialogue embraces that, but it goes too far. I mean, one of the main villains is a small boy that's actually an older man, and there's booby traps that don't really make any sense, and the big monsters are bugs. I mean, it's weird. It just kind of outstays its welcome. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you were to separate the first half and the second half, they could be two completely different games. I mean, the second half of the game, you can tell where Resident Evil 5 got the vast majority of its inspiration from. And most people prefer and remember the earlier half of Resident Evil 4. And that's telling. I don't think it's bad, though. It definitely keeps you interested, keeps you moving. The characters are all memorable. I have trouble remembering names, but that's a personal issue more than anything. The fights are pretty good, everything's paced well, and when you finish the game, you unlock a harder difficulty, which is traditional, some costumes to mix things up, and bonus modes, one that follows what Ada's doing during the game. You get a lot of extra content just by beating the game. And it's nice because the game is also designed to be replayed, because you keep all of your progress. You do what is essentially a new game plus. You start over, but you have all your money, all your weapons, all your upgrades and everything. And you can just keep replaying the game over and over and over and over again, and getting faster and faster and faster, trying new tactics and stuff. And that's really cool. I really like that, because I've owned this game since it came out in 2006. It's 2016 now. I played it several times. I mean, I've lost my save data a couple times between consoles and everything like that, but it's one of those things that it's not even my favorite in the series. And I find myself popping it in just to play through it again, completely randomly, and that's pretty cool. So I can definitely say that while I can't specifically speak for the control scheme on the current generation systems and the other platforms that much, when it was on GameCube, it felt like it was designed for the controller. You know, it was good. And I think they aced it with the Wii edition, so top notch there. Definitely one of the high praise points for it. The game looks amazing. I mean, whether you're playing the standard definition Wii, GameCube, PS2 versions, or you're playing the 1080p 60 frames per second ports on the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, and the PC, it holds up really well. I mean, Capcom could have done a little bit more for the HD ports with the textures and stuff, as fan mods have proven, but that's true of everything. It's all a case of budget and time over investment and everything like that. But it does, man. It's hard to believe that this game is almost 12 years old now, and the fact that it just keeps getting ported over and over again just is a steadfast representation of what the game really embodies, you know? It's a fun story, doesn't take itself too seriously, makes it clear pretty much up front, so you don't expect one thing and get sideswiped by another. At this point in time, depending on which platform you go with, you can find a game for $10 to $20. I mean, the Wii edition, which it's impossible to find it new anymore unless you get really, really lucky. I mean, you can pick it up on eBay, Amazon, GameStop if you support that company. You know, $10. I mean, if you're like the majority of people, you might not be getting that much use out of your Wii U right now. But the Wii U is physically backwards compatible with the Wii games. You buy this for $10 and you'll be good. You know, it's 15, 20 hours of your time, endless replayability, a lot of extra modes. It has the Mercenaries mode, which is, you know, a cool arcade style thing. I mean, you can't beat that. But say you don't have a Wii U, or you just don't want the older stuff. I mean, double that up. Get the full package like you would on the Wii, but get it in the HD version, you know, on the current platforms, digitally or physically, and it's about $20. Sometimes cheaper if you find it on sale. 15 I've seen it for. That's fantastic, you know what I mean? It's nowadays you pay $60 for games and they're not even finished. You have day one patches, day one updates, designed from the ground up for DLC. That's not the case with this game. It is clearly a game of its time period, but for good reason. And that is something that you don't see enough anymore. I'm not a big fan of HD remasters. I don't think they're necessary. As it becomes harder for people to go back and access archives of stuff like this, some games warrant being held up. You know, look at where we came from, you know? And I think Resident Evil 4 stands the test of time in that. And I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 to 10 years you see it ported again in 4K with completely redone polygonal models and stuff, and I just can't argue with it. Bearing in mind that this is not my favorite game in the series, I really just don't have enough complaints about it to even feel justified in pointing them out. It's a little long for my personal tastes, but I understand that a lot of people are going to disagree with that. 15 to 20 hours for a $10 to $20 game, that is great value. The controls, whether on the Wii edition or the current generation consoles, you know, they're great, they're well thought out, they feel tight and balanced and smartly implemented. Even on the Wii edition, you can plug in a classic controller, or if you are using a Wii, a GameCube controller, and get the original experience. So you don't even have to use the waggle, as they call it, motion control and pointer, because a lot of people don't care for that. So you do have options there. There are several moments where you will feel the thrill of an action chase, and then several where you're going to fear pause the game like I did repeatedly in my playthrough. Great all around. So what's my overall verdict? Even if you have never played a Resident Evil game in your life, 4 I think is probably the best point to start off with for anybody. I mean, it doesn't lose the focus that the series did in later games, and it doesn't have the restrictions of the earlier games, camera perspective and difficulty. So if you ever wanted to give the series a chance, that's a great point. So it can work for anybody, and story-wise, it fills you in right off the bat, and even if you skip it, you don't even need to know it. There's nothing that it references that makes you have to have played the earlier games. So it's great for anybody to jump into, and it's available everywhere, so everybody can access it. It's super cheap. I have to say, without a doubt, this is 100% a must-buy. Don't hesitate. Don't have any doubt. If you're really, really, really unsure, obviously look into renting it, maybe by GameFly or whatever means that you have access to. Redbox, I think, if you're lucky, they might be carrying the digital versions. But I cannot suggest it enough. It's a safe purchase. It's a worthwhile investment. It is easy for anybody to get into. It covers most genre tastes, besides sports and racing, obviously. And yeah, without a doubt, going on my verdict decision of pass on it, give it a rent, or definitely buy it, I cannot even remotely hesitate to say it is a definite buy. This is a great addition to your library on any platform whatsoever. It is a great way of appreciating where we have come in gaming and showing you more appreciation for some games maybe you've played recently and didn't play this before. Like Gears of War is heavily inspired by this. Dead Space is heavily inspired by this. I mean, pretty much any third-person game in general has its roots in Resident Evil 4 these days, and that's pretty cool, especially when you go back and say, oh yeah, I can see where a lot of that came from. Hopefully that helps you come to the conclusion of adding something new to your library, maybe trying something different that you hadn't considered before, or maybe just revisiting a favorite, you know, oh yeah, I totally forgot I really was into that game when I was younger. So, thanks for watching. From here on out, I'm going to continue doing my best to bring you one of the most honest opinions you can find online. Hit that like button, and if you appreciate what I've done here today and what I've been doing, you know, I would have definitely be thankful for a subscription. You know, hit that subscribe button, keep yourself updated to my content. It's pretty much every day. Thanks for watching, as I said. I hope you enjoy your night, and I will talk to you guys later. See ya.